Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 creative coach, and welcome to my vlog, where normally it is my job to highlight my creative journey and kind of extract the various lessons that I'm learning, as well as the techniques I'm applying to get over certain hurdles. But in the past couple of weeks, I've been talking a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement and things of that nature, and so this will kind of be a mix of my creative journey as well as kind of what I'm doing with in terms of that movement. As I've stated before, part of art is to get your message out there, is to have a deeper meaning to, for me, it's also learning about myself in terms of what I believe in and kind of expressing my core values. But sometimes in life, there's things that are happening that are greater than you, and that you kind of have to go beyond yourself to really participate in. And this is certainly between COVID-19, between the protests, between the political climate of America. This is one of those times that you really can't just ignore all that stuff and ball yourself up and do what you want to do. Now, granted, I'm one of the things, I guess this is where I should open up with, is I think, like all things, in order to sustain them, you have to create good habits and find a way to make them part of your daily routine. So I'm trying to, figure out the long-term effect of all of this, and in the sense that, very early on, I feel like I was a lot of times reacting to the various things that were happening, various things that I read, rather than responding. And so now, I overloaded myself with a lot of information. I took a lot of action as much as I could, and kind of, I was very bullheaded. And not saying there was anything wrong with that. I think for that point in time, it was the right decision, right? As I've talked about many times in the past, Don Miguel Ruiz has one of the principles that, always do your best. And in those moments, I was always doing my best, so I can never have regrets, right? But now, in terms of accomplishing the goal of, let's say, police reform and various other things, there has to be a kind of greater strategy and so forth. And also burnout is a very real thing in all things, right? And so, I kind of had to assess of, okay, how do I go about this in a day-to-day basis, knowing that true change is not going to happen overnight. And so that's where, I'm kind of blending in things into my daily routine that I haven't to the full extent in the past, and sort of integrating creativity back as well, because that does fuel me, but also now through this new perspective that I have about the world and the things that I've learned. I think oftentimes we use art to process what's going on. Certainly, one of the great examples is like Steven Spielberg. After 9/11, he made War of the Worlds, and he made Munich, and that was his way of really processing his emotions, right? And, that was, movie making in general takes years, and so, based on those two movies, that was a long period of time for him to really grapple with those emotions. And so, I think in terms of 2020, it'll be very interesting to see how a lot of artists kind of grapple with it. Not saying one of the things, people are saying God, I hope not every movie is about, the pandemic and this apocalyptic thing. But there are, I do think there are beneficial ways to process emotions, and I think it will reflect in a lot of people's art in, the years to come once they finalize the product, so to speak. So from the kind of take action standpoint, I've been doing a couple of things. So number one, I've been getting more involved in terms of politics. So I am participating in this program called Adopt a State, which is through Pod Save America. You can check it out at, but I'll link to it down below. But through Pod Save America has this thing called Adopt a State, and what it is to participate in battleground states by helping register voters, by helping people get informed about the issues and things of that nature, so that way, the key states that are quote unquote the battleground states, can, in this case, it's a democratic effort. So being frank and open about it, but nonetheless, that's one of the ways I have chosen to participate, because I think reform has to happen on both a federal but also a local level. And so we've had a series of meetings over Zoom, training sessions more so they're referred to as, and we're slowly, at first it was so I adopted Florida, but there's other states like Arizona and whatever else. And we all kind of as a group got together, and now we're slowly starting to splinter off into our individual states, and slowly getting to the granular of how to participate and what that means and the action steps and so forth. So it's been an interesting process to learn. I think as I look at it, I'm proud to be doing it because of what it means, but also I'm very excited to learn those certain skill sets because it's a world I don't know, quite frankly, and it'll be interesting, all the things that I've already learned, and as I kind of experience it firsthand, I think there will be some benefit to it. One of the things that they talk about is the idea that how to connect with people, and certainly as a storyteller, that's the thing that you aim for with if it's a poem, if it's music, if it's a film, if it's a book, whatever a painting, whatever the case may be, you want your work of art to connect with somebody. And so how you achieve that, this is certainly a great exercise to be able to do that. And obviously that's not why I'm doing it, but I think all things in life you got to look at. I think when you assess the viability, whether or not you should do something, you can do it from a multitude of levels. And certainly, if you start to look at it, how what do I get out of this as well? I think then it makes it a lot more beneficial. You're much more apt to participate. And I wish a lot more people looked at things like that. And that includes, a lot of times, people in what they deem as menial positions, there's always something to be learned from that. And it's just all about the perspective and attitude that you take. So I'm excited. I'm excited, as I said, on a number of fronts, on the big picture scale of really, having a helping hand and knowing that I'm trying to do what I can to, in terms of the politics that I believe in, but also, that I am getting a new skill set. The other sort of way on a daily basis that I'm trying to integrate things is, kind of like people have meditation and journaling, and I'm more of a journaler than meditator. People also have exercise. For me, it's walking my dogs and things like that. These are part of my daily habits. And so one of the things that I've been integrating is also just kind of listening to, the easiest form for me is listening to podcasts. So I've been listening to a lot more podcasts that have been sharing Black voices, Black stories, and all kinds of information. I've been listening to some of Jay Shetty, Lewis Howes, Marie Forleo. There's a number of them. Michael Moore's Rumble. They've all had wonderful guests, and some really insightful perspectives. So when I walk my dogs, it's easy for me in that sense to ingest and learn and participate. So that's one of the ways I've been doing this. Also, just watching stuff. So I've rewatched Do the Right Thing, which is Spike Lee's movie. There's a documentary my professor Rob Patton Sproul did called Welcome to the Terror Dome, which is based on Public Enemy's, well, the title is based on Public Enemy's song "Welcome to the Terror Dome," but the documentary itself is about Public Enemy. So watching that. Great Netflix series called "They've Gotta Have Us," which is about black filmmakers and kind of the state of Hollywood, if you will. I did watch Spike Lee's "The Five Bloods," which is about black Vietnam veterans who returned to Vietnam. So, kind of integrating in that sense and trying to read things as well. For me, reading nonfiction is sometimes easier than watching documentary films. So usually, that's why with most of the stuff that I mentioned, they're not really documentaries. Although I guess it's a pretty decent mix there that I just highlighted. But I am watching movies by black filmmakers that are more fiction based. But in terms of the reading, for example, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and this is an important one because I feel like with a lot of my friends and things like that, growing up, one of the things you could say is, oh, well, I'm not a racist, right? And a couple of things this does. Number one, it creates white exceptionalism, meaning, well, I'm not part of the problem, therefore I don't have to deal with it. But furthermore, the opposite of racism is not being racist, it's being anti-racist. And when I kind of really dove into that principle, it really struck me because, number one, I was kind of flabbergasted that I didn't put two and two together. As a storyteller, for me at least, I always work in values, love and hate. And certainly, like if you're from the Robert McKee school of thought, everything works in terms of value, justice and injustice, right? And all these different things. And you try to have your characters be on the spectrum of various values, and never is it, the worst one is never the opposite. It's actually the negation of negation, right? So if the values are love and hate, well, the negation of negation is love disguised as, or hate disguised as love, right? And I was just so struck by this because, once you kind of start to see the world in that perspective, from the storyteller perspective of like, oh wow, most of the world is racist disguised as anti-racist, and it's simply because we don't know any better, but we also don't push ourselves to know any better, and so that's. I don't know. It was a very interesting point to learn, and again, so it worked on me on multiple levels, right? So the humane level of like, wow, this is just so eye-opening, and I can't just say I'm not a racist. No, I have to be an anti-racist, and okay, like what does that all entail? And then secondly, it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, from a storytelling perspective, how are those values defined? How do you kind of look at it when you do stories? So that was very interesting to kind of look at that way. The other kind of shifting gears, right? So getting into the creativity side, one of the things I'm having to sort of grapple with is that there's never going to be an ideal time to be creative. And I think a lot of us as creatives, we yearn for that, right? This is the weekend where I'll work on the script or the book or whatever, and I'm going to knock it out or do as much as I can, blah, blah, blah. Right? We always, the sun's got to be shining and it's got to be at the perfect angle. We got to have our tea, but like everything's got to be in its place. And to think that there's going to ever be an ideal day. And when I say ideal day, I don't mean just like one single day. I think we all know that with creative projects, it's going to take a little bit longer than just a day. But we set aside these perfect scenarios, when in reality, that's the work of the amateur, as Stephen Pressfield would say. That's resistance coming at us, when in reality the professional works at the craft every single day. And I knew this, and I adhered to it. But as I said again, I made a very conscious decision that I was going to stop for a little bit and really focus on the bigger issues. But now I'm kind of, as I said, I'm also trying to integrate the things that I have learned in the past couple of weeks and integrate them into my art. So like, looking at the things that I'm creating and, what were the things that I used to think? And now as I go forward with the things that I want to create, how do I kind of now infuse this and reflect the various lessons there? So, part of, to kind of get there, I have to understand, like, there's not going to be an ideal day for me to create. I really have to just kind of set aside time, just like I am creating the habits of learning and continuing my education in terms of racism in America. In terms of my creativity, I have to have that sort of same effort, and it's up to me, if there's like a time split, I'm certainly continuing to put a lot more time into my education and talking with people that I know about these pivotal issues versus the time that I'm putting into my creativity. But nonetheless, I'm kind of jump starting that and just putting in even like 30 minutes a day. I've been kind of doing just 30 minutes a day just to do it, get back in the routine and whatever else. So that's kind of what I've been doing as far as creativity. The other thing, last week that, the next pass of the sound design came in for my movie. And one of the things that I'm approaching it in terms of how I go about it is I'm going to really listen to it on multiple platforms before I give notes. So watching it on a TV, no different than I would any other movie, and seeing how it sounds there. Listening to it through headphones on a computer, perhaps just kind of on a tablet and seeing how that sounds. I'm even one of the kind of things that I thought about, like I'll listen to it as a podcast. Like I'll take the audio, I'll put it on my phone, and I'll just listen to it while I walk the dogs, and just kind of listen to it that way. So as many ways as I can listen to this movie, that's what I'm going to do, just to see how it sounds and kind of make my notes based on that. Now, I did actually watch it once already. This was on my TV, and for the most part, it sounded good. A couple of notes here and there, but overall, I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that necessarily, but I'm glad. Like, I guess if I'm pleasantly surprised, I'm just more glad that things are kind of aligning, and that the spirit with which I went into making the movie, as far as like the methods that I had used and thought could work are now actually working, and certainly having people, in this particular instance, Edgar, doing the sound mix and the sound design, like he's able to take kind of what the initial nugget and the ideas were and whatever else, and really get them to a place that work, and so that's really cool. Him and I will kind of reconvene next week and really talk about it, because I'm going to need a couple of days to listen and watch the movie in the various ways that I've talked about. I've not seen anyone kind of really approach sound in this way. I mean, they say like listen to it in a kind of variety of factors, yes, but I've never heard. I don't know. I'm sure someone out there has done it, so I can't be like the most like out of the box thinker on this. But it'll be interesting for me on a personal level to just hear it across various different mediums. Also, secondly to that, I sent it to a couple of friends that have never seen the movie, that weren't part of the making of, and just said, hey, the movie's pretty much done. I'm just looking for anything that might like stand out. But just watch it as you would. If you want to watch it with family members, watch it with family members. Great. The only difference is just kind of keep a notepad next to you, and if something jumps out at you, just jot it down. But otherwise, just enjoy it. And so it'll be interesting to see what they come back with, if anything. It's always that weird balancing act. Like, I want him to give me notes, but I don't want him to give me notes just for the sake of giving me notes. So it'll be interesting. We'll see. From not necessarily my creative standpoint, but certainly kind of in the mix of where the world is in terms of, I don't know, just creativity and so forth. I did go to a drive-in movie theater through a program that I've been going to, like street food cinema. Normally in years past, they do like a picnic setting outdoors and things like that. And it's a lot of fun. Obviously this year, that's not really viable. And so instead they've reshuffled to have a drive-in movie experience. And so I saw Mrs. Doubtfire on Sunday night, which was last night, and at least at the time of this recording. And it's interesting. I'd never been to a drive-in theater. It'll be, I don't think that's going to be like the long-term way for most of us to see movies in the long term of it. But certainly, maybe for the next like 6 months, this could be a more viable way to see some movies. I don't know. Truth be told, it wasn't necessarily my favorite experience, not because of the presentation or so forth, but simply because I think it's a lot more fun when you go with friends. Like for me, I can go to a movie theater and be by myself and just kind of get lost in that. For me, it's a very zen experience. But I think, and maybe it was because I saw a movie that I'd known and grown up with and seen a bunch of times. It was one of those things, I guess, like I could have stayed in my house and seen it with my dogs versus being excited for a new experience. So maybe that was it. Maybe I don't know. It's tough to say, but yeah, I don't know. I am curious to see how the driving experience kind of continues, because I do see it ramping up a little bit more in the coming months. But at the same time, based on my first experience, it wasn't like, it wasn't anything to write home about for me. Other people did seem to enjoy it. And again, maybe it was just the movie, maybe it was because I was alone, I don't know. But figured I should kind of highlight it. The other thing I do want to highlight, as you know, because I call myself the 360 creative coach, I'm a big advocate of all things as far as mastering mental fortitude and various other things in order for you to succeed as an artist at it. And one of the big ones in terms of that, also succeeding besides just mastering mental fortitude, is the idea of finance. We all have to get better with our finances because we live in the world, and the better your finances are, the more leeway you have as a content creator, right? And so, as such, I've done various episodes in the past about finances and things of that nature. And this past Friday, I did get a chance to interview my friend Chelsea Galicia. We released that episode yesterday, this Sunday, about her new book, which is called Save Yourself, which is basically an acronym to spend in alignment with your values, not your ego. And I thought it was a wonderful episode. I think it dives into a realm of finance not really talked about. And I would highly encourage you to check it out. I've linked to it below so that way you can check it out and learn a lot. I think, as I said, there's foundational things to us as human beings that we all need in order for us to be able to be creative. And certainly finances and wealth management is one of those things. And so that's why I'm a firm believer and want to point out this wonderful interview with Chelsea. Anyway, that kind of, there's other stuff that I did during the week, but overall, that's kind of the big items, if you will. I wish I had, I don't know, maybe that sounds exciting, maybe it doesn't sound that exciting, I don't know. I wish I'd had kind of more to give, but a lot of the work of last week was more internal and reflection and so forth, so maybe that's why I don't have as much to share as I normally do. So, I wish you well on your journey to continue to, do the things you would like to do, but also to do the inner work as well. I mean, as an artist, I believe that self-reflection is necessary in order for us to create the art that we want to create. Anyway, that's it. That's the vlog. If you have any questions or comments, things of that nature, please just comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. I would love to chat with you. Throughout the week, I post various lessons, sometimes about mental stuff, sometimes about actual strategies. So I would encourage you to subscribe if you're not already, so that way you can get those when they come out. And if you think other people in your life would benefit from my various teachings, by all means, please share it with them. I certainly would appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.